So which is better, therapy or life coaching? Let's explore that a little bit today. You're likely here because you're considering perhaps one or the other. Or in general, you're considering hiring some form of professional help to get you through a difficult transition in your life, or maybe some concrete goals that you're having a hard time reaching. Or maybe you're really feeling stuck in your day-to-day life and it's really impacting you. It could be a multitude of these things, combination, or perhaps some other stuff. But either way, you're probably here because you're considering some additional form of support. I'm Stacy. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm licensed in the state of Illinois, so in the United States. And my framework is very much trauma-informed, and I blend my understanding of Eastern schools of thought in general of this more holistic wellness, energetic approach, and I take my understanding of those frameworks and make them work in this Western model in which I function in the United States. It's important to just acknowledge the general overview of psychotherapy, and that is traditionally assessing, diagnosing, and treating clinical mental health disorders. I don't love the term disorders, but again, through our Western model, this is what it is. I heard somebody else describe wellness in such a beautiful way that I can't take credit for this. This individual described wellness on this spectrum. So if the roots of psychotherapy are to support people with diagnosable mental health conditions and treat them, they're over here on this end of the spectrum of really struggling, really not feeling well, doing well, having a really hard time. And then if we were to look at the opposite end of the spectrum, these are people in their current circumstances feeling like they're thriving, they're functioning well, just overall tackling life's challenges. We all, at various points in our lives, find ourselves somewhere on this spectrum. We've probably danced with each part of this spectrum at one point or another in our lives. This middle part is what I like to just call being a human. It's life stressors, relational challenges, feeling stuck, feeling not so great about yourself, having difficulty navigating some of your big feelings. Like, this is life. That, again, we all face this stuff in various forms throughout our lives. Different seasons find us in different parts of this spectrum. So I want to first and foremost normalize this. The majority of us at some point could find ourselves fitting criteria to meet a diagnosable mental health disorder. Okay, so my background as a licensed therapist, I find myself functioning more in this realm because in the United States and other parts of the world, insurance often will cover the treatment for individuals finding themselves in this end of the spectrum. Now, there's benefits and drawbacks to that. One benefit, as I mentioned, is access to care. So for folks who would not be able to pay out of pocket for services or support for their own wellness, insurance can open up this access. There's some drawbacks to opening up insurance to have that certain level of access. We won't get into those nuances here. However, there's some things to be considered with that. For individuals finding themselves over on the other end of the spectrum or even somewhere in the middle, if it is not a clinically diagnosable condition with a treatment plan that is evidence-based, insurance is just not going to cover that. As of June 2025 in the United States, where and when I'm recording this video, now maybe that will change. I don't know. However, there are supervising bodies that make sure that therapists are maintaining minimum professional standards of education, as well as certain legal standards that we need to adhere to. That's confidentiality, privacy, HIPAA laws, things of that nature. In the coaching world, as of June 2025, and please fill me in if I'm misinformed in this, to my knowledge, there isn't a legal minimum standard of care or education that coaches are legally required to adhere to. Now, that's not to say that individual coaches themselves don't choose to participate in certain bodies with regulatory standards or their own training or uphold themselves to a minimum standard of care. However, that is up to each professional in the coaching world. Whereas if you're a licensed therapist, you have no choice but to adhere to these minimum standards of care. And a large part of that is because, again, traditionally, if you were a client of therapy, you would exist in this more vulnerable population. Somebody who is a licensed therapist has undergone 4 years of undergraduate, give or take, 2.5-ish to 4 years of graduate schooling, and included in that graduate schooling is, depending on the state and even their country, I don't know as much about other countries' standards, but in the United States, depending on the state, it's about 1,500 hours up to 3,000 plus hours of clinical hands-on experience working with clients supervised by a licensed clinician. And then in addition, after their schooling and those clinical hours, the therapist then takes an exam in order to pass those requirements to be licensed. And after their licensing, then they keep up with a minimum number of continuing education credits and other additional state dependent requirements, as well as their profession, psychology, counseling, social work, etc. Let's get into some of the overlap here in terms of this wellness spectrum. For people that find themselves in this middle ground, you could really go either way here, right? You could choose to work with a therapist, and that therapist likely has the skills in the toolkit to either assess how your treatment can fit into an insurance-based model, or if you choose to go private pay, there's perhaps some choice in that. Very dependent on your circumstances and the therapist, nuance to that, but there's perhaps some wiggle room with that. You could also choose to go the coaching route. And again, your insurance won't cover that, so you don't have that choice. However, to have the choice to seek out coaching. Now, why, if you're finding yourself falling in this middle part of the wellness spectrum, why would you choose therapy or why would you choose coaching? Great question. Coaching tends to feel more action-based, more linear, more let's formulate some kind of hard goals and work towards achieving them. Let's assess maybe there's some mindset blocks or there's certain obstacles coming up in your life. Maybe it's relational challenges, what have you, but it's a very hands-on, here and now, again, action-oriented, tends to feel pretty linear, right? Like, do this, assess, how's that going? Okay, do this next thing, assess, how's that going? Okay, do this next thing, assess, how's that going? Of course, I'm generalizing, right? Each coach varies in their approach and their skill set and their passions, but that's a good way to think about it. Therapy can take all of these approaches, again, dependent on your situation, the therapist's skill set, framework, modalities, all of that. So sometimes therapy can pull on some of these action steps, future-oriented. However, a big piece of therapy is often taking this step back and looking at the client or the individual, or individuals for that matter, if that applies to your situation, maybe it's couples work or family or whatever, that individual and their circumstances, and taking this step back and looking at them as a whole person with this entire life story. And so factoring in, yes, their past experiences and how that impacts them in the present, and using a lot of those past experiences to inform present and future goals, action items, right? Some of it, again, depending on the person, their circumstances, some of it is processing through a lot of past experiences and even present stuff through various modalities. We won't get into all that here, but there does tend to be more of an acknowledgement of past and present experiences in therapy. Now, that's not to say that a life coach can't do that per se, but it's not as common. There's less focus on that, which, depending on your circumstances, could be more or less appropriate for you. It really depends. It varies so widely. Now, again, what are your circumstances? Where are you falling on this wellness spectrum? What challenges are presenting themselves in this season of your life? Maybe this season of your life is not just this is a present thing popping up and I need some very pointed action steps to overcome it, which if that's the case, maybe coaching would be great. Maybe it's, man, this thing is surfacing in my life and it's surfaced before and it continues to surface and I'm really feeling stuck. Now, again, depending on what that is, maybe you could go coaching route or you could go therapy route or you could even go both. There are individuals who choose to seek out therapy for certain reasons, and in addition, they seek out a life coach. In therapy, they might be working on specific things, and their life coach likely brings this additional skill set, this additional focus, this additional framework. Just like therapists, life coaches come in all shapes and sizes in terms of what they specialize in, how they view things, what their approach is, what they charge, how they structure their sessions, whether it's 45 minutes, 90 minutes, 60 minutes, once a week, twice a week. There's so much nuance to that. Therapy as well, there can be a lot of nuance to that, especially if it's a private pay kind of situation. If insurance is involved, there's less wiggle room. However, it really depends on a lot of different factors. So having said that, either way, whether you're hiring a therapist or hiring a life coach, you should feel safe, seen, and supported. This person, you're hiring them. They are working for you. This is your life. This is your wellness that you are entrusting them with. Now, that's not to say you're handing over the keys to the car, so to speak. You're in the driver's seat. They are a passenger. They get to have a voice and provide a perspective, suggestions, but at no point do they get to steer that car. You are in charge. There may be times when they say, hey, what about this path? Hey, what about this route? Hey, have we considered this? You get to say, yes, I didn't consider that. Let's try it. No, I don't think so. No, I've already gone down that path. You're in charge. Now, very dependent on your circumstances and what you're needing and wanting. If you find yourself feeling more of the I need this, you might want to start with exploring therapy. Need has more of a higher level of professional support. I'm really stuck in my day-to-day life feel to it. And want, to me, sounds more like I can get through stuff. I'm functioning in my day-to-day life. I'm just feeling stuck in these certain areas, which could take you in either direction, coaching or therapy, or even somebody else. Having said that, we won't address that in this video, but that's just all that to say, you're not pigeonholed into just therapy or just life coaches. There's plenty of other supportive professionals out there who I think are fantastic, and another video for another day, we can certainly expand upon this. Again, your wellness. How empowering that you get to choose your support team, whether that's a team of one and it's you, and you figure out that, you know what, I've got this and I'm going to tackle this and I'm going to figure this out. Fantastic. Maybe it's a team of two, maybe it's you and your partner, maybe you're seeking, as we're addressing in this video, some professional support. Whatever that may be, you are in charge. And the person that you're hiring, whether it's a coach or a therapist or somebody else, is supporting you in moving that needle from wherever you find yourself in the spectrum. If you find yourself, again, really stuck and having a really hard time functioning, your therapist in that case should be supporting you in transitioning on this spectrum. And if they're not, have that assessment, have that dialogue, have that conversation, right? You're in charge of your wellness, so some of this responsibility falls on you, and some of it also falls on the professional that you hired. And if it ruffles their feathers so much that they can't have this conversation of assessing your progress, then perhaps you need to reconsider this person. Same goes for a coach. Your coach should be helping you move the needle in terms of your wellness and helping you progress where you want to go. I hope that this provided a bit more clarity in terms of which is a better fit for you in this season of your life, a coach or a therapist. If you have additional insights or you want to share your experience perhaps with a coach or a therapist or both, please share them. Let's expand this dialogue. I'd love to hear from you all, what your experiences are, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between, or things that I missed on here that you'd like to add. If you're a coach yourself, if you're a therapist, please shed some more light on this. Flesh this out even more. By no means am I the end-all, be-all expert. We all can learn and grow from each other. So with that being said, please take care of yourself. You are so worth it. I so deeply appreciate you spending this time with me. Until next time, take good care. I'll see you soon.